Welcome to Chapter 14, Stress and Health. And you may be saying to yourself, well, what are we studying this for, Mrs. Hawkins? It's not health class. Well, the answer to that is this. Psychology has a field called health psychology, and this combined with behavioral medicine helps us to see how not just our motivations from last unit and our emotions from last unit combine to help to contribute to the amount of stress we have, and how is it that we're going to be dealing with that stress that we have. How can we be a healthier individual through the combination of medical advancements as well as psychological advancements. So hopefully you're not stressed, but if you have a moment now, you can pause this and we'll see if you are actually stressed. If you can access the information on Blackboard for the teen stress test, then you can actually take it and determine whether or not you are stressed. So go ahead and pause me now. Welcome back. Now let's talk a little bit about stress and stressors. Stress itself is a thing that we call anything that will disrupt our life, or even something that threatens to disrupt our life. It's not always something that actually is disrupting our life, but it always is going to involve a relationship between a person and their person's environment. So the stress reaction is what the person has, and the environment is what creates a stressor, which is the thing that causes the stress. And the question is stress all bad? Well, you could probably think of lots of scenarios where it's not all bad. In fact, stress isn't all bad. Stress is a good thing. It can be the impetus to getting us to do something. Stress itself is not a bad thing. Stress can be bad if we have a maladaptive reaction to that stress. As you may have read, the stressor is any event or any situation that's going to force a person to change what they're normally doing or adapt to a new situation. And again, this can be unpleasant and pleasant things both. And there's 4 major types of stressors. First, we have catastrophic events. These are going to be anything that's sudden, unexpected, something that's potentially life-threatening, something that is a traumatic event. And an example of that might be, for instance, let's imagine you're at the bank and you're held up. That's a catastrophic event, being robbed or mugged. Let's imagine that you are involved in a plane crash. That's certainly a catastrophic event. The second one would be life changes and strains. These are anything that's going to create a demand to which you have to adjust on an individualized basis. These are going to be things that happen, kind of a big change that happens once every so often. So an example of this would be graduating high school and going to college, moving out on your own, starting a new job, maybe getting married, divorced, having a child, things like that. Chronic stressors are going to be anything that's going to continue over a long period of time. So you can have a chronic stressor that is really, really intense, something like being homeless. That's certainly a chronic stressor that will exist over a long period of time, and it's very severe, very intense thing. Something that would be less chronic, or sorry, something that is chronic but is less intense would be, let's say, lack of sleep over time. So not getting enough sleep can be something that is a less intense stressor over time. And then you have your daily hassles. And it's going to be anything that's just kind of annoying. Your little brother jabbing in your ear all the time, Mrs. Hawkins being like, where's your homework, where's your homework? Those things are examples of daily hassles. So if we have an opportunity, you can pause me now and you can take the annoyance list inventory available on Blackboard. You can see how your levels of annoyances, i.e. daily hassles, add up. Welcome back. So how do we measure whether or not a person is stressed? Well, there are several ways. 2 we're going to talk about here. The first is the Social Readjustment Rating Scale, the SRRS. And this is Holmes and Ray. What they look at is they look at what they call life change units, or LCUs. They add up the number of life change units that a person has, and they say that if you have more LCUs, then you're much more likely to suffer from a physical or a mental illness. The Life Experiences Survey, or the LES, looks at not just what's happening to you, but how you're reacting to that thing. How do you perceive that change? So is it going to be a positive thing, a negative thing? Are you seeing this as a challenge? Are you seeing it as a drain on your life? So it also is able to look at how gender and cultural differences can change stress. For instance, why one person will look at a particular stressor and see it as a challenge, while another person will look at it and see it as a threat. So again, if you want to pause here, you can access the Life Change Index survey on Blackboard to determine where your life change indexes are. And welcome back. Let's see if you understand. Homelessness, really disliking your job, and living near a noisy airport are examples of what kinds of stressors? If you said chronic, you'd be right. So, stress responses. Why does stress make you feel so doggone stressed? Well, our body goes through several physical responses. The first that we can identify, that we can look at, is Hans Selye's General Adaptation Syndrome, or GAS. He says there are 3 stages of the stress response process. The first stage is alarm. And in the alarm stage, an event is going to be interpreted as we react physically and emotionally. So there's going to be 2 phases within the alarm stage. The first is shock, and the second is counter shock. So first, something stressful happens. You enter into the shock phase. This is where your brain, mostly the hypothalamus, but the other parts of your cortex as well, speed up those adrenal glands. This is when the autonomic nervous system is getting your sympathetic nervous system bumping, okay? So this is where you're getting the adrenaline, the noradrenaline, all going straight into your bloodstream. Those presence of those hormones are speeding everything up, and you're getting ready for fight or flight. And as it says here, the body's producing emergency energy here, essentially. And then you get into counter shock. Counter shock is the name for when your parasympathetic nervous system is activated. And this is going to start to conserve more physical energy by calming your body down for maybe a long-term stressor or a long-term strain. So shock gets you ready for the short term, and counter shock will get you ready for the long term. So that's stage 1. Stage 2 occurs, we call this resistance. And this is when your body starts to respond, I guess, to the alarm stage. Not only we're initiating fight or flight, but your body's actually going to be doing the fight or flight. So you're not just ready for it, you're actually going to be engaging in that fight or flight. And this is where you start to say, okay, long-term basis, what we're going to do is we're getting ready to resist this at a really long-term basis. So instead of doing a quick response to a threat, you're settling in for this is something that may be a weekly, a monthly, a yearly thing. So your body's kind of getting ready for that. And then you start to figure out, how do you solve the problem of the stressor? What avenue you're going to take to get yourself out of this stress or this strain. And if you can't be successful in figuring out a way to deal with the stress, if the stress continues to come at you and come at you and come at you, and you can't get out from under it, then you enter stage 3. Now, if you're able to deal with your stress and get rid of that, then you stop at stage 2. But if you can't deal with that, you get into the stage 3, which is exhaustion. And this is once your energy is depleted over time and over time. I mean, stress is a very, very draining thing. This is eventually going to cause you exhaustion. Your body's going to succumb to what we call diseases of adaptation. And this is going to be essentially a deterioration of your body. Your immune system is going to be suppressed, your heart can be damaged, your blood vessels can be damaged as well, leading to cardiac problems, and they're going to be physical exhaustion, mental exhaustion, and just kind of like all the things and the emotions involved in that as well. In very, very extreme cases, a person could even die from this. So if we want to look at a mnemonic, a possibility here for a way for you to remember this, Selye's ideas are alarm resistance, exhaustion, a gas, general adaptation syndrome. So there you go. Super cheesy Hawkins way for you to remember what his ideas are. Let's talk a little bit about psychological responses to stress. Now, we have emotional responses, cognitive responses, and behavioral responses, and the 3 categories that we'll look at. Now, emotional responses, as we just finished studying chapter 13, we know that different people are going to react emotionally differently in different situations. The way you react in a particular stressful situation can change with whatever stressful situation there is, the amount of stress that you have going on. And it's going to tend to come and go with the onset of that stressor. So when a stressor starts, you're going to have an emotion, and when the stressor goes away, you're going to have either a release of that emotion or another emotion that takes over for it. And if you have prolonged stress, that's going to cause you tension, irritability, short-temperedness, you're quick to anger, you're going to jump all over anybody. Sometimes that catharsis hypothesis may come in play there. And certainly a person can have increased anxiety about what they're going to do about this level of stress they have. Next, we have cognitive responses, and we know cognitive means thinking. So when a person is stressed, and you know this is true, when you're overly stressed, you're just like, ugh, my brain doesn't work anymore. And you can think of the times maybe that you just kind of shut down. You're like, I'm done, I can't do anymore. This is going to be a cognitive response to stress. So when your brain feels like mush, you can't concentrate on anything, you can't remember anything that you've just done, this is certainly your brain trying to respond to the level of stress that you have. Maybe you need to chill a little bit. One element involved here is ruminative thinking. And ruminative thinking is what happens when you can't think about anything else without that stressor kind of peeking its way in there. it continues to come back and you're worrying about it and thinking about it over and over again. And often you're going to focus more on the negative aspects of that thing than the positive aspects of it. So if you've got something extremely, and think about this all the time. Imagine you get into a fight with your friends. You focus on, and especially if you're trying to relay, so you're trying to tell one of your friends, said this, you're trying to tell one of your friends about something that happened in a fight or whatever, you're going to focus on the negative stuff. And then the positive things kind of fade into the background. This really happens with the cognitive responses too. Over-arousal can occur, and this will cause what we call our normal range of attention to narrow. So when you're under stress, it's almost like you get tunnel vision. You cannot see outside the box, as it were. Functional fixedness, mental sets, there's no creativity going on. It's just tunnel vision, almost completely convergent thinking, and kind of only one avenue for you to take. So the creativity is gone. And then we get to behavioral responses. Behavioral responses are going to be anything that's going to be physically, so your shaky voice, as we talked about last unit with given a speech in class and you're holding your paper's shaking. Your body posture can change. You can hunch over or stand up straighter depending on if you see it as a challenge or a stress. Your facial expressions are going to change. Maybe you get that little, your eyebrows go down so you seem stressed. Irritability, aggression, absenteeism, and suicide attempts are certainly examples of behavioral stress responses. So, check yourself for understanding. Okay, think here. Hanselier's 3 stages of gas are what? And they're an example of what kind of response? General adaptation syndrome are A-R-E, alarm, resistance, exhaustion. And that's an example of what kind of response? If you said physical, you'd be right. Psychological response can be what? They can be emotional, they can be cognitive, they can be behavioral, and you're certainly going to be doing either a physical or a psychological response to that stress. So, why do some of us work better under stress? Well, some of us freak out. Good question. There are lots of different things that can affect whether or not we see something as a stressful situation. Our perception of those stressors. If you think back to chapter 13, Lazarus's cognitive appraisal theory, he says we've got those primary appraisals, the secondary appraisals, and the reappraisals whenever we're faced with something that is a stressful situation. If you see something as a challenge rather than a threat, you're going to be feeling better about yourself, both physically and mentally. You're going to have less negative stress consequences associated with that, but cognitive factors are going to be less effective as the intensity of a stressor increases. That means that the stronger a stressor becomes, it doesn't matter how you think about it, it's going to cause you some stress. So you could be like, this is a really great earthquake we're experiencing, and it's not going to matter. That's certainly a stressor that's going to be intense, and it's going to cause you stress for that. Also, the predictability and control of stressors. That's something that's very important. If you feel as if you are out of control of your situation in your life, or if a stressor seems to be unpredictable, it's going to affect you more. If you see it coming, you can prepare yourself for it. It makes sense. If it's unpredictable, it's going to affect you much more. So we have this thing called locus of control. It's your perception of how much control you have on your life and on your circumstances. And there are 2 different kinds of locus of control, or loci of control would be the plural of it. Some people have a generally external locus of control, which means that you think that things outside of your life control your fate, what you're going to be doing with your life, so on and so forth. Whereas some people have an internal locus of control, which is where they feel as if they're in control of what they're going to be doing, the things that happen to them. So if you think about people that always are blaming other people for what happened. I didn't do my homework. Not my fault. Such as they think about all these other people that are influencing in the fact that they didn't get their homework done. Can't do it. Not my fault. X happened and Y happened and Z happened and I just couldn't get it done. We're really looking at someone who has an external locus of control, as opposed to someone who takes ownership for that and says, okay, well, I have control over my own destiny. So if you could pause it here, you can take the locus of control assessment on Blackboard, and then you can pick up with our next chunk of the lecture, and we'll see you then.